You know, the greatest threats to our ambitions, they rarely announce themselves with a roar. More often than not, they arrive with a familiar smile, maybe a friendly handshake. In the high-stakes game of power, the line between an ally and an adversary is just dangerously thin. And the most painful lesson? Well, it's often learning that the hand you trusted to have your back was actually holding the knife. And Voltaire just nails it with this quote. It perfectly captures the chilling wisdom we're about to dive into. He wasn't just being clever. He was pointing to a fundamental and honestly an often fatal truth about human nature. You can prepare for the enemy you see coming, but what about the one who's already inside your walls? To really understand just how sharp this double-edged sword of friendship can be, we've got to look at a classic story of trust and betrayal. So let's travel back to the Byzantine Empire, where a bond that was forged in loyalty ended in blood. So let me introduce you to Emperor Michael III and his best friend, a guy named Basilius. Now, Michael saw talent and loyalty in this simple horse trainer. He trusted him completely, so much so that he elevated him from the stables to the very center of power, sharing his wealth, his secrets, and eventually his throne. This timeline, it reveals a really tragic and frankly, a predictable arc. It starts with an incredible act of kindness. Michael makes Basilius his co-regent, but that very act unbalances their relationship. You see, gratitude can be a really heavy burden, and over time, it soured into ambition and envy for Basilius. The man who gave him everything was no longer a benefactor. He was a rival, an obstacle to ultimate power. And so the path was set, leading to Michael's assassination by the very man he thought of as a brother. So here's the crucial insight, right? Michael's biggest vulnerability wasn't a foreign army or some political rival. It was his own affection. He was blinded by the illusion of friendship, completely unable to see the envy that was growing right in front of his face. He just couldn't imagine that a friend would betray him until it was too late. And this story perfectly illustrates the brutal logic behind one of the most provocative principles in the entire study of power. So let's break it down. Of course, this principle comes directly from Robert Greene's masterwork, The 48 Laws of Power, a book that treats power like a game with timeless and definitive rules. And the law we're looking at today is, well, it's maybe one of its most unsettling. And here it is, law number 2, never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. It's totally counterintuitive, it feels cold, but it argues that from a purely strategic perspective, you have way more to fear from your friends than your enemies. But why? What is the psychology behind this? Why would the person you trust the most be the one most likely to turn on you? Well, the answer lies in the subtle poisons that can infect a friendship when power gets introduced into the equation. Just think about it for a second. When you hire or promote a friend, you change the dynamic forever. The very act of kindness can, paradoxically, become the seed of resentment. Let's unpack these risks. In a professional setting, friends will often hold back honest criticism just to avoid an argument, and that robs you of valuable feedback. Your act of kindness, like hiring them, can actually feel like condescension, making them feel like they didn't really earn their spot. This creates this uncomfortable power imbalance where envy and resentment can just quietly grow. And because they know you personally, they know your weaknesses, which makes any potential betrayal that much more damaging. The very familiarity that makes them a friend blurs the professional boundaries you need to lead effectively. Okay, now for the second part, which is arguably the more strategic part of the law. If friends are such a liability, what on earth makes an enemy so valuable? The Roman historian Tacitus just hit the nail on the head here. Gratitude is complicated, it's often a heavy burden. But proving a rival wrong, turning an enemy into an ally, now that is motivating. A former enemy has everything to prove and absolutely nothing to take for granted. I mean, just look at the contrast here. A friend, maybe feeling a little entitled, can become complacent and prone to envy. They might take your generosity for granted. But a former enemy, someone you bring into your circle, they have everything to prove. They expect nothing, so they're often grateful for any opportunity. Their loyalty is transactional, it's clear, it's motivated by self-interest, and a desire to prove their worth. Without all that baggage of emotional history, the professional relationship just stays focused and effective. So the takeaway here is powerful. Without enemies, we can all get a little lazy. A known rival forces you to sharpen your wits, to stay focused, to stay alert. They're a constant reminder that you have to be at your best. A comfortable friendship, it rarely provides that same competitive edge. Now, this isn't just some abstract theory. how do you actually apply this law in the real world without becoming a paranoid recluse? Well, the key is strategic awareness, not a complete abandonment of all your relationships. Okay, so let's think about these 4 strategic steps. First, be selective. Judge people by their skills and competence, not by your personal feelings for them. Second, you've got to set boundaries. If you absolutely must work with a friend, maintain crystal clear professional expectations right from the beginning. Third, use your enemies. Don't be afraid to turn a rival into an ally. Their loyalty, as we've seen, is often stronger. And finally, and this is maybe the most important one, stay alert. Always be watching for those subtle emotional signs of envy and ingratitude. Power is a fluid game, and allegiances can shift in an instant. So, in the constant maneuvering for position and influence, we're all taught to watch our opponents, right? The person across the table? But maybe the real question you should be asking yourself is this: are you paying enough attention to the person who's sitting right next to you?